Hi everybody, we are on to assignment 3, part 2. Now, you should have part 1 done, which is the asymmetrical dynamic part of the project. And now we're going to find shapes within this to use on the next part of the project. So what you're going to do is use tracing paper to find negative space or white space shapes within this composition. Now you can cheat a little bit and I'll show you what I mean. So I find this shape here, and right here I've got this little gap. Well, I can use my artistic license to fill in that gap and then trace out the white shape. Here's another gap I'll close. Here's another gap. I'll swing around. I'll close another gap wherever I want. So we're just using the general white space of the area to find interesting shapes. So you can see I've got a pretty interesting shape happening right here. And I can just close off this top. And I'm being a little rough with this part because it's kind of hard to use tracing paper over raised ridges. So I'm going to hunt around a little bit and find other shapes to use within this composition. And I need to get at least 2 of them. So here I've got some right here. Then what I'll do, I'll set this aside and I'm going to cut these out. So here I've got my shape cut out. And from there, what I'll do is I will then trace it onto black paper or any other single colored paper. And I mentioned we may not have our construction paper or colored paper yet. And in that case, we can do this all as collage, but I do want a single source so we're not varying the color too much. So I've got this transferred like this. Then what I'll do is cut this shape out, use that to make more copies, and eventually end up with multiple copies of the same shape. So I've got one shape there. I've got another shape here that I have just a few copies of. Now I'm going to use these to compose a symmetrical composition. And what I suggest you do first is grid off your paper so you can get really good alignment. So use your T-square, find the midpoint. I've got about 12.5 here. So there's the midpoint. And I'm just drawing lightly because I want you to be able to erase these lines after you're done. So we're gridding this paper to show us how to align things perfectly. And if you want, you could even quarter this. So I've got 6.5, so I go 3 1/8, that. And this will make your job even easier. And that is 5, so I go 2.5. So I'm quartering it and then 16thing it. And 10, 5. 2.5. There you see, I've got it all gridded up nicely. So here I can start to compose, and I can flip and twist shapes if I want to, but what we need to do is to get them as mirror images. And We're also making at the spaces that we're making in between the shapes. Here I'm getting a nice diamond in the middle. And I'm using these grid lines to get things lined up properly and perfectly. I've got my other shapes here. Like that, and so on. Then what I would do once I've had them all placed is I would make little registration marks at important places. So maybe the corners. That way I know where to glue everything. So I could lift, and then I've got these marks so that I know where this shape has to be glued. So I'll continue on with that and experiment a little bit to try to make the most interesting symmetrical composition that I can. And in the end, you should end up with something like this. Symmetrical composition. You can have it in this orientation or landscape orientation, whatever you like. Just remember the right and left halves have to be mirror images. That's all.